right, well, welcome to Impact Moment. I am Pastor Donna from Impact Church, located in Aurora, South Dakota. We are continuing on with Chapter 7 of our book, The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. And last week we were talking about how big our dreams can be and should be, and are we too afraid to really set those big goals and big dreams for ourselves? So, one of the questions that I posed to you last week, I was kind of wondering, and please answer down below in the comment section, are your dreams so big that really, it says having a vision beyond your resources is synonymous with dreaming big. So, are your dreams big? Or are your dreams for you, or are they for the kingdom? And has God surprised you with how he's answered prayers for you? So there was quite a few questions asked last week, and I was just kind of curious if you've had the opportunity to really reflect on those questions this week. So I think some of these questions really make us self-reflect, and I think the answers are sometimes really eye-opening, and they make us think of things that we haven't thought about in a really, really long time. So I will go ahead and then get started with Chapter 7. So we are talking about the solution to 10,000 problems here. And our author writes on page 73, if you're following along. If you're not, that's totally fine too. You will still get a lot out of this if you don't have the book. You can still listen to our Impact Moment here, and there's so much good information. So I try to give you enough information that if you don't have the book, you're still going to be able to follow along pretty quickly. So God asks Moses a question. So it's more than a question, it's the question. Your answer to this question, the question, will determine the size of your prayer circles. Is there a limit to my power? Well, the obvious answer to that question is no. So God is omnipotent, which means by definition there's nothing God cannot do. Yet many of us pray as if our problems are bigger than God. I'm guilty of that too. So let me remind you of this high-octane truth that should fuel your faith. God is infinitely bigger than your biggest problem or biggest dream. I'm going to say that sentence again. God is infinitely bigger than your biggest problem or biggest dream. And while we're on this topic, his grace is infinitely bigger than your biggest sin. Ooh, such good stuff in here. So the modern mystic A.W. Tozer believed that a low view of God is the cause of 100 lesser evils, but a high view of God is the solution to 10,000 temporal problems. And if that's true, and I believe that it is, then your biggest problem isn't an impending divorce or failing business or doctor's prognosis. And the author writes, please understand, I'm not making light of your relational or financial or even health issues. I certainly don't want to minimize the overwhelming challenges you may be facing. But in order to regain a godly perspective on your problems, you have to answer this question. Are your problems bigger than God? Or is God bigger than your problems? Our biggest problem is our small view of God. And that is the cause of all lesser evils. And it's a high view of God that is the solution to all other problems. So let God ask you, is there a limit to my power? So there really are only two options with answering this question. It's either yes or it's no. And until you come to the conviction that God's grace and power knows no limits, then you will draw small prayer circles. And once you embrace the omnipotence of God, you'll draw ever enlarging circles around your God-given, God-sized dreams. So, how big is your God? Is he big enough to heal your marriage or heal your child? Is he bigger than a positive MRI or a negative evaluation? Is he bigger than your secret sin or secret dream? So that section alone is super powerful, written by Mark Batterson, And it really makes us wonder, why do we downplay in our own lives just the power that God has? And a lot of times we don't always think of, will God do this? But sometimes we ask, can God do this? And if we truly believe that He is all and that He is omnipotent, then God can do anything. But yet, our logic, it still gets in the way sometimes. So he writes, Moses was perplexed by the promise God had given him. And how could God possibly provide meat? Remember, he was on this track with the Israelites, and there were thousands of people. And God said, you know what? Hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to provide you enough food, not only for a day, but for a full month. And there was no resources at all in the lands where they were traveling. But yet, he made quail literally rain down from the sky in enough amounts that it fed a lot more people than what they even had. But, before this happened, Moses was confused. It writes, he was perplexed. It did not add up. But at that critical juncture, when Moses had to decide whether or not to circle the promise, God posed a question to Moses: is there a limit to my power? So the size of prayers depends on the size of our God. And if God knows no limits, then neither should our prayers. God exists outside of the 4 space dimensions that He created. And we should pray that way too. And this, I'm telling you, it takes practice. It takes huge amounts of practice. So, with God, there is really no big or small or easy or difficult, possible or impossible. And this is difficult to comprehend because all we've ever known are the 4 dimensions that we were born into, the 4 dimensions that God created. But God is not subject to those natural laws, and He has no beginning and no end. To the infinite, all finites are equal. Even our hardest prayers are easy for the omnipotent one, God, to answer because there is no degree of difficulty. So take what Mark Batterson wrote and really stop and think what he just wrote there. He said, there is no degree of difficulty. None. So really, we should never be afraid to ask God for the hard prayers, for the huge prayers, and not expect for Him to be able to answer in some way, shape, or form. And the author continues, he says, if you're like me, you tend to use bigger words for bigger requests. And you will pull out your best vocabulary words for your biggest prayers, as if God's answer depends on the correct combination of words that we use. And trust me, it doesn't matter how long or how loud you pray. It comes down to your answer to the question: is there a limit to my power? And with God, it's never an issue of can He, it's only a question of will He. And while you don't know if He will, you definitely know that He can. And because you know He can, you can pray with holy confidence. Such a good chapter with chapter 7. So, he talks on the very bottom of page 80, he's talking about retracing this circle of successful prayer. And he says sometimes when you hear answers to prayer that others have experienced, it can be discouraging instead of encouraging, because you wonder why God has answered their prayers but not yours. I think that's key with what he just wrote there. It is so true. It's almost to the point where we get sometimes in our life a little bit jaded, where we think, oh, okay, well, God answers prayers for everybody else, but He doesn't really answer prayers for me. And how do we change that mindset? Because there's been a lot of years that most of us have been stuck in that mindset. And it's hard to retrain our brain and to really fully believe that God is for us. So the author writes, but let me remind you that these answers have rarely happened as quickly or easily as they sound. there's usually a backstory to these prayers being answered. So we are quick to celebrate the answer to prayer, but the answer probably did not come quickly. And I've never met a person who didn't experience some big disappointments on the way to his or her big dream. That is so true. He says sometimes the power of prayer is the power to carry on. It doesn't always change your circumstances, but it gives you the strength to walk through them. When you pray through, the burden is taken off of your shoulders and put on the shoulders of Him who carried the cross to Calvary. So, sometimes when we don't always get what we want, it's not only the fact that God is punishing us or anything like that. That's not the case. A lot of the times He wants us to pray through our situation in order to gain insight into our own capabilities and into our way of relying on Him. One of the questions that Mark Batterson poses in our study guide, he says, how does it make you feel to know that your hardest prayers are still easy for God? Remember, he wrote, difficulty really does not exist when we have a truly omnipotent God. So how does it make you feel then to know that your hardest prayers are still easy for God? I think it is encouraging that we can not be afraid to just dump all of our questions and all of our hard prayers, our hard dreams, our hard goals, and give it up to God. And it says literally take it off of the shoulders of ourselves and give it to Him who has carried the cross to Calvary. And I just kind of look back and Batterson shares a personal story about when he was being prayed for with his asthma. And it kind of brings back some interesting times of prayer, health-wise too, for myself or for others in my family too. And I think a lot of times especially if we've received healing before, then we always kind of have made the comment, at least in my family, well, we can't expect God to heal it every single time. But that's really a wrong way to think about things, because God can heal it each and every time, no matter what it is that comes up health-wise. But yet we still doubt, we still put that logic, and it's almost like if we put our own quantification on how many times God can actually answer our own prayers. And then so I think as time goes on, our trust dwindles. And that's really unfortunate, because sometimes when we are at our biggest struggles in life and we have a dwindled faith, sometimes we're not able to easily pray through our circumstances and gain that strength and feel like we can truly pray anything to God. But yet we are reminded over and over and over again from the Old Testament to the New Testament that God provides. He might not provide in the way that we have been asking and begging and on our knees crying for, but He will always show us a way to survive our circumstances. And that I truly believe. So I just want to really encourage you this week to think about what are some things that have been really heavy on your heart. What has something that's been in your life that you just feel it's too big? God can't possibly help me with this situation. And try to reframe your thinking about how is it possible that God would ever be too small. God is never too small. God is actually so big. He is so much bigger than our worst giant problems. And really try to sit with that feeling and let yourself feel those words. And let yourself know that those words are true. This takes practice. Practice, practice, practice. Because even though we read about it in the Bible, we read about God's goodness in really great studies like this, we sometimes still think, it's not for us, it's for everybody else. Everybody else is getting their answers, their prayers answered, but not me. And that's very discouraging sometimes if we are stuck in that feeling. And I've been there, and it's hard to get out of that. So, and I just really encourage you to really think, how does it make you feel to know that God is so big that he will answer the biggest of your prayers, the biggest of your problems? And to know, like, yes, it might not be the exact answer that you were hoping for, but know that it is the right answer that God provides each and every time. He knows what you need. He knows what your family needs, and he will always see you through the circumstance, no matter what. That is his ultimate promise. He never once promised that life as a Christian was going to be easy, because it's not. So, I know. That's the truth. But it's so true. It's so true. And that if we were having an easy life as Christians, then we wouldn't need faith. And I think there's a lot of hand in hand that goes in with how we struggle, how we face trials, and how we rely on our faith in God to get us through. We continually pray through our circumstances, and we ask God to help us, knowing that he is omnipotent. He is the great one. So next week, we're going into chapter 8, which begins part 2 of the book. And we are going into really talking about how Scripture really teaches us how to pray in all the different forms of prayer that we see in the Bible. So that's going to be exciting. So join us next week. And with that, I will just let you reflect on these questions and answer below. I would love to see your thoughts and your questions below in the comments. If you have any questions, I would love to get back to you. And just have a great rest of your week. Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, go ahead and click the like button. And also, think about subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos. We also have a Facebook page where we post upcoming events for our church, Impact Church. And speaking of the church, we stream our services live to Facebook and YouTube every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So be sure to turn in for that. And if you missed the live stream, you can always watch them later right here on YouTube. And once again, thank you and have a great day. Huh?
Like I've got cancer. God, heal my cancer. Babushki, you're healed. Thank you, God. Uh-oh, cancer came back. I'm not going to win the lottery again, am I? Bummer. Because I already won it this year, so I have to wait 10 years, right? Before I can get another, like, it's a punch card. Like, I have to pray 10,000 times before I get my miracle, is that it? Or...
Yes, and you can't go more than 3. But isn't that weird that our brains really literally do that?
I think it's because we're around mortals all the time, so we think, it's ingrained in us that, well, you can't walk on water, so how could he?
Exactly.
It blows our mind.
Yep. It doesn't compute, does it?
No.
Exactly.
It's a miracle.
And see, we had somebody actually tell us, and I don't even remember who this person was, which is probably a good thing. So, but they had, after Jeff had passed away from cancer, they're like, oh, you must not have prayed hard enough. I know. So, wow. But that really wasn't the problem. But we, too, were putting limits on our own prayer when we were going through the cancer diagnosis, because we could literally trace back numerous times where Jeff had been healed with other serious medical issues. And to the point where it's like, okay, well, he's already healed him twice before, so we really can't expect him to heal him a third time, can we? And we're all like, no, that would be asking way too much. So, but that really is not a correct way to think about it. So, because there is no, hey, you get, it's almost like a cat. Like a cat gets, 9 lives? So what, we get 2 lives, and, God's like, I'll heal you twice, but oh, I'm not going to heal you 3 times.
Right.
So,
or it might be like some people might be like little judgy, little like Mr. Johnson over there. He's got good upbringing, so of course he's going to get a better job.
yes.
God's going to listen to him more than me because I'm a garbage man, and I'm below a worm on the totem pole. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like the sun rains from the sky, and when it hits coming down, he'll take care of them first before the little worm like
Yeah.
me. Maybe that's what people's brains are like, thinking. They put themselves lower so they feel lower,
Exactly.
and they're just sad and depressed little people.
And I think when they hear about other people's prayers getting answered, they're like, that's lovely, but that'll never happen to me, you know?
Yeah.
So I think we all do that. I know I do that.
Yeah.
So,
Doubt.
yep. Yep.
Strong with the doubt.